Okay, hi everyone. I was expecting a little bit more people, but this is kind of nice because it's a little bit intimate when it's smaller group of people. So today, as you can see, we'll be talking about doing an introduction to goal setting. So talking about goal setting and the importance of goal setting. Um, so if we go on to our next slide. Oh, there you go. So by the end of this session, you'll be able to have a better understanding of the importance of goal setting and especially goal setting early on. We're going to look through some frameworks that can help you with setting goals. And then at the end, we'll spend a little bit of time as well on maybe establishing some preliminary goals and what that looks like, or not even at the end, kind of throughout the workshop. But before we do that, I figured it would be nice for us to get to know each other a little bit. So my name is Maria Kyres. I work at the School of Graduate Studies. I'm the Graduate Career Development Coordinator. So I've been working there since January of last year. So almost coming up on 2 years now. And I did my undergrad here at Concordia in psych. So it's kind of nice to be back at Concordia in a different capacity. And I'm coming with about 7 years of career development and HR experience. So I've worked as an employment counselor, doing kind of similar things to this. And I've worked in on the administrative side of HR and in talent acquisition, recruitment. So now I'm kind of putting all of those experiences together here in my role at Concordia. And then I also did my master's at, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize I didn't switch slides. I did my master's at Queen's. So now, okay. So the next question we're going to look at is why is goal setting important? So Iris or Songtai, do one of you want to share a goal or an example of a goal so that we could use that when we're discussing the different points here? Like I'm going to be talking about direction and clarity, motivation and focus. And if we have an example of a goal, it would help. So do either one of you want to share an example? This semester? Oh my gosh. Okay, I feel like that's so soon. Okay, so publishing a paper. So great. So if we're talking about publishing a paper, we want to have direction and clarity, right? So clearly define the goal. So we know that the goal is to publish a paper and when, either this semester or next semester. So the goal is clearly, it's clearly defined. We can make it a little bit more clear, of course, but we know overall, generally, the point is to publish a paper. Um, when we're talking about direction and clarity, so we want to know where we're going. In order to know where we're going, we have to know what we want to do, right? So now we know we want to publish a paper. We can kind of prioritize our tasks, prioritize either our day-to-day, our week-to-week, what, the time we're going to set aside to be able to accomplish that goal. So that's direction and clarity. Another way we can think of clarity, for example, is you said that you're in engineering, right? Okay, so of course you would probably be looking at which journals to publish in the field of engineering, which journals perhaps are well respected, are more related to your area of study. So that's going to help give you a little bit better sense of direction and clarity on how you want to move forward with that. When we're talking about motivation and focus, for example, so this is important because when we achieve certain goals, it increases our level of motivation, and then consequently, that motivation helps to sustain our tasks further, and it also shows us that we're having some kind of success, and that success increases our confidence and focus. And so it's kind of like a circle or a loop, if you will. And research also kind of shows too that when we make small achievable goals and we achieve them, we are more likely to kind of continue down that path. So having a clear idea and direction of where you want to go is going to help you to establish the steps that you need to get there. And then it's going to make it a little bit easier to kind of achieve those steps, feel a sense of accomplishment, and give you that motivation to want to keep going. Does that make sense so far? Perfect. And we're going to go into more detail too about like what that looks like and how we do that. Um, so after motivation and focus, we need, of course, time management and progress tracking. So time management is going to help us in the sense of making sure that we don't leave things until the last minute. So especially for publishing a paper, there's going to be multiple rounds of revisions. I don't know, probably having to do looking at certain studies that might take time. Maybe you're not getting the sort of outcome that you want, so you'll have to try again. So it's going to take time, and this is where we understand that we have to start early on, and kind of give ourselves, like, spread out the tasks essentially and not wait until the last minute. So setting up a schedule that works for you, if you know that you're someone that works better in the morning or in the evening, on weekends, setting up your schedule how you like to help you achieve those goals. And then so we have a deadline in this case, right? So we're saying publishing a paper either this semester or next semester. So it's great that we have a deadline, but we don't want to wait until the end when we get to that kind of end goal. We want to be able to track our progress along the way to see what's working. Does it look like we're going to be able to achieve our goal for the desired outcome, or do we have to tweak things? Maybe we have to start adding more time per week that's dedicated to that particular task. Maybe we're realizing that we have questions or we don't understand something, so we need to set up a time with our supervisor. So starting in advance and keeping track of your progress is going to help you to kind of like better achieve your goal at the designated time that you like, and also to make sure that when you get to that point, you've sort of done everything possible to have a positive outcome. And then, yeah, so adjust goals, meaning, if you see, like I mentioned, that you need to adjust the amount of time you're devoting per week, or perhaps, reach out to different people, or maybe take at Grad Pro Skills, we have workshops that we offer for writing your thesis, publishing papers. Maybe you realize that there's certain skills that you need to brush up on a little bit more. Starting early is going to allow you the possibility to kind of integrate those different resources that you need to help you achieve that goal. And then time to completion and career alignment. So hello, time to completion and career alignment. So again, it's sort of a little bit going back to what we were saying. This I'm kind of like linking it to a career alignment. But for example, when you're talking about publishing in a certain journal, that could be helpful for a career alignment, because it could mean that you start to reach out to certain people within that field, or people, maybe other collaborators that you can work with. You're starting to grow your network. So this is something that you're starting to do a little bit early on, and not waiting again till the last minute, not waiting until a few months before graduation, to help you down the line to ensure that your career aligns with your values, your interests, and things that are important to you. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so we're gonna go into like examples so that it's more concrete and not so kind of wishy-washy. But I wanted to do an analogy of the importance of goal setting, and I figured if I talked about food and a dinner party, most people would understand that. So we see here that we have dinner party and goal setting. So there's kind of similarities in the sense that when we want to set a goal, we have to, as I mentioned, establish early on what that goal is, what that goal looks like, what our outcome wants to be, right? So that's a little bit like a dinner party where we decide, okay, we're gonna invite some people over, we're gonna figure out who's coming, what their dietary restrictions are, we're gonna plan the menu, what the allergies are, things like this. So after we do that, we're going to take inventory, right? So we've set our goal. So if we stay with the goal of publishing, we're going to take inventory perhaps of the things that we already have to kind of get us to that goal. So it may sound a bit silly, but okay, do I have a laptop? Do I have a place where I can kind of start writing and set aside time every week to be able to write uninterrupted? Do I have certain skills that I feel are going to help me to get to that point? Or if not, what are the skills that I think I'm missing? Or maybe it's not even skills, maybe it's information, resources. What do I feel I need more of to kind of help me achieve that goal? So that's the sort of the taking inventory of what we have and what we think we're missing, or what we think we might need to help us achieve that goal. And then the gaining experience part is where, well, as the name suggests, where we would kind of gain experience or go more towards what it is that we think we're missing. So in this case, I've also given examples like volunteering, internship. So for example, if you're thinking about further down the line after graduation, and wanting to work somewhere in particular, but you don't have experience, it's good to think about these things early on, because then we can start to engage in activities like volunteering or doing an internship, where this is going to help you to grow your network. It's going to help you to acquire some experience. It's going to help you to figure out what you like, what you don't like, your interests, what you maybe want to pursue career-wise, or maybe even what you areas of interest, and then you can bring that back to your thesis and bring that back to your scholarly work and see how you can kind of take on certain tasks or research that's going to help you to be more successful in that role, or following that particular career path. And then, of course, the importance of prepping in advance. So we all say it, but I mean, it's good that you're here early. By here early, I mean like here early on in your studies. It is very important to start early on. It's much better than waiting at the last minute, because you're seeing what it is that you again need to get to your goal at the end, what it is that you might be missing, what you think that maybe you need to pivot, maybe you need a bit more time. Maybe you want to start working on building your network. These are all things that are going to be very important and kind of help you to get you further to your goal. And then the smooth transition. So when I say smooth transition, it doesn't necessarily mean like smooth transition right from degree and then next step is job, but a smoother transition than had you not started early and started thinking about all these things early on and planning early on. So of course, we know that like most things in life, an early investment, early consistent investment is what's going to be helpful to kind of get you to where you want to be. We also see from research as well that people who, again, I'm kind of focusing on career here, but people who think about their career, or students who are thinking about their career early on while they're studying, who are attending workshops like this or other career development workshops, who are going to networking events, building their network, they are more likely in the end to have greater career satisfaction, and kind of feel like a greater sense of happiness and just satisfaction in general, because you feel like at least there's been a little bit of agency in getting you to where you are, right? So we can't control everything in life or certain things, but what we can control is the time that we start, the consistency that we keep, the schedule that we keep, the tasks that we give ourselves, and that we follow through on these things. So I didn't really talk about the dinner party part because I wanted to focus more on the goal setting, but you can kind of see on the slides, but it was just to kind of draw an analogy to make sure that everyone understands. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, so my next slide was just to see if anyone had questions. If not, okay, so we're going to review some frameworks now for goal setting. So we are going to review 3 frameworks. The first one is the IDP, Individual Development Plan. Has anyone heard of the IDP or used it before? Okay, so we'll talk very briefly about the Individual Development Plan. There's also a technique that people like to use. People either say SMART goals or smarter goals. I think smarter goals is the one that's a little bit used more frequently now. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about smarter goals, and we'll look at some examples of smarter goals. And then there's also the goal setting workbook. So that is something that Catherine has set up for you all, and that you have all received an email of. Does everyone have their workbook in front of them? Okay, perfect. So Catherine will speak a little bit about the goal setting workbook shortly, and then we'll also leave you a few moments to kind of look through the goal setting workbook and spend a little bit of time on it. So first, I wanted to just talk about individual development plans. So there's quite a few that you can use. They're online and they're free. This is an example of my IDP. So this is one that's typically more often used by people in STEM. And then we have this one, Imagine PhD, which is more often used by people in the humanities or social sciences. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, to be honest. They both kind of assess the same thing. So as you see in Imagine PhD, there's an interest assessment, skills assessment, values assessment. And then if we go back to my IDP, which, oh, does it not let me go back? Okay, So if we look at the science, my IDP for people in STEM, it's essentially the same thing. If you see the column on the left where it says assessment, there's skills assessment, interest assessment, values assessment. Basically, the purpose of an individual development plan is you go in, you create an account, and it'll ask you, there's some kind of questionnaires, and it'll ask you questions about your interests, skills, values, and it's to help you get a better idea of what it is that you like, what it is that you're good at, where your strengths lie. And this is to help you get a better idea of, for example, career-wise, where you wish to go. So I completed the Imagine PhD. And there's another one, it's called Chem IDP. It's for students in Chem. So even though I have no background in Chem, I did actually complete that one just because I was curious to see what the STEM IDP looks like. And it's really helpful because it gives you a better idea of your strengths and your areas of interest, which can then help you kind of, for example, if you want to go on LinkedIn or other, job search engines, it can give you an idea of what you should be looking for or what may be of interest to you, depending on what you're studying, the tasks that you like to do, things that you value. And then the other good thing about it is that it'll tell you kind of like on a scale some of the skills that where you're stronger in some skills and where you're less strong in other skills. So that's a really good thing to know too, for two reasons. One, because let's say you see that there are certain skills that you need that you're not so strong in, and those skills would be useful for you in a job. It would be very important and good to know that early on so that you can kind of work on strengthening those skills throughout your studies. So when you get to the point where you're applying for a job, you can show that you've been able to strengthen those skills. The second reason why that's important is because pretty much any job interview you go to, employers usually will ask you, what are some of your strengths and what are some of your weaknesses? So it can feel like a very daunting question, but they're not asking like to elicit some sort of emotion out of you, or to see like, the kind of answers, or if there's a right or wrong answer. It's more so to see if you have a little bit of self-awareness, and if you're aware of where your strengths lie, but also where your weaknesses lie, and not only that you know where your weaknesses lie, but that you're aware of them and you're taking effort to kind of correct those weaknesses. So that's why I'm saying I think the IDP is really good for that, because it can kind of help you to identify, like I said, the strengths, and then the weaknesses, the points you need to work on a little bit more, and to identify as well, your areas of interest, your values, which are all things that are important later on when you're going to be kind of looking for a job, or really just anything in life. So that's a little bit about the IDP. If we look at SMARTer goals, so has anyone heard of SMARTer goals before? Okay, yes. Have you? No? What about you? No? Okay. So we'll see here. So SMARTer, it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So originally it was SMART goals, and then now people are kind of using more the acronym of SMARTer goals, having added the last two things at the end, which is evaluate and reward. So we'll go into a little bit more detail with two examples. But as I mentioned at the beginning, right, so you want to make sure that your goal is specific. So if we go back to the example of publishing a paper, we have a specific goal in mind that we want to publish a paper, and I think it's in one of either measurable or achievable, no, time bound. So we know that we want to publish a paper, and we know that it's either going to be for this semester or next semester. So we've got our specific, we've got our time bound. Relevant, we know that it's relevant, of course, because it's publishing something that's relevant to your research, relevant to your degree. It's going to help you kind of progress with your thesis. So it's highly relevant. We need to make sure that it's achievable. So if your supervisor came to you and said, I need you to publish a paper for next week, probably not a very achievable goal. But for this semester or next semester, you come back, you assess what your tasks are, other responsibilities that you have, to determine, is this an achievable goal or not? And then measurable. So is it something that can be measured? Yes. We know that we have a date at the end. Hello. It's for this semester or next semester. Can we measure the progress? Absolutely. We can. You can see how much you're writing over the course of the next two semesters. You can measure it by having perhaps meetings with your supervisor to ensure that you're on the right track, to ensure that your revisions are going as they should, to ensure that maybe there's other areas of importance that your supervisor will tell you to kind of look at. But so essentially, it is definitely a measurable goal. And then the last two at the end, evaluate and reward. So how can you evaluate your progress? So again, this is where I'm talking about perhaps setting up meetings, once a month, for example, with your supervisor to determine how your progress is moving forward, where your supervisor thinks there may be areas you can further work upon, or what you're doing well in. And then the reward aspect would be at the end. So let's say you tell yourself, okay, I would say there's kind of two areas for reward. It could be at the end when you've submitted your paper for publication, but I think it's also important to do small rewards throughout to kind of help sustain that motivation and focus like we were talking about at the beginning. So you can say perhaps every month at the end of the last Sunday of the month, I'm going to take an hour to sit down and review my progress and see where I'm at. And then I'm going to go spend an hour or two, doing whatever it is that you like, maybe spending time with friends, maybe going for a walk in nature, whatever, whatever it is you like. So the reward doesn't only have to be at the end. I would say it's good to kind of even like bake it in throughout the process to kind of keep you motivated throughout. So does that make sense so far? Does anyone have questions? Good. Okay. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples. So our first goal writing, actually, so it's quite similar to what you've mentioned, your writing objective. So let's say we say that we want to write 500 words per week on our dissertation starting October 1st. So that's starting tomorrow. And so we're making it measurable, right? We're making it very specific. It's relevant because it's our dissertation. It's something we have to work on anyway. And then I will do this by setting aside 30 minutes every morning to write, and I'll track my progress on the first of every month. So not only are we making it measurable, but we're making it time bound as well. So that's where on March 1st, 2020, we want to have something for March 1st, 2026. So that's where we're making it time bound. And then we're also mentioning that we will attend Thesis Boost to ensure that we have 3 structured writing days in my agenda. So just a side note, Thesis Boost is something that Grad Pro Skills offers. It's kind of like a writing retreat for graduate students. And you can come and work on either your dissertation or any other kind of academic writing that you're working on at that moment. And it happens in November and May. So I've put in that example of Thesis Boost because it is something that we'll actually be doing in November if you're interested. But we can see here that the goal is very specific. It's measurable, right? We can track our progress. We're setting aside time, 30 minutes every day to work on this goal. It's achievable, right? We're not saying I'm going to sit down for 10 hours every day and write a goal or write for my dissertation. It's something that's very achievable. It's broken down into small bits. It's time bound. We see that we have a deadline for March 1st, but we also have we've given ourselves kind of a moment to track our progress at the first of every month. So we have sort of 2 kind of timelines, if you will. And then the reward at the end is that I'll reward myself by taking reading week off to spend time in nature and cook more, or, again, whatever it is that you like to do. So that's one example of how we can kind of use the smarter technique to set goals for ourselves. And then, so that's more of an academic example. And I wanted to give as well an example that's more related to career development. There you go. So in this example, we were saying, let's say I want to learn more about the career opportunities that are available in my field. And so the goal that I'm giving myself is that I will conduct 6 informational interviews. So does everyone know what an informational interview is? Maybe I'll just very quickly say what an informational interview is. So informational interviews are also what we call coffee chats. And essentially, they're just informal interviews. So let's say, for example, you go on LinkedIn and you see somebody who is doing the job that you want to do. So you would reach out to them and you would ask them, do you have like 20 minutes for a coffee chat or informational interview. And the point is for you to kind of have a chat with them and ask them some questions that are related to their area of work. So, how did you get into this area of work? What kind of skills do you use on a day-to-day basis? What does your day-to-day look like? If I want to kind of progress into this role, what should I do? What should I focus on? What kind of experience should I acquire in addition to my degree? So that's sort of an informational interview, just allowing you the possibility and the opportunity to kind of like get information from someone who's doing something related to what you would like to do. So yes, so in this example, we're saying we'd like to conduct 6 informational interviews by December. So it's very specific. It's very measurable because we're saying that we want to do 6 interviews from now until December. It's quite achievable as well, right? We're not overwhelming ourselves. We're saying 6 in a period of about 3 months. So that could be 2 per month. It's very relevant because it's something that you're doing that's going to help you to kind of progress in your career. It's time bound in the sense that we've given ourselves a deadline. So we've said that I want to do this, achieve this goal by December 19th. And we're also saying too that on the last Sunday of every month, I'm gonna take some time to track my progress. So we're able to evaluate our goal as well throughout. And then I've put, again, I'll reward myself by taking a 2-week break to enjoy the holidays with friends and family. So the reward, like I mentioned, could be at the end. It could be throughout, whichever one you feel is kind of more relevant to you. So does that make sense for the SMARTER goals? Does anyone have questions about that? Or maybe you have a question about how you could use it to a goal in particular that's particular to yourself. If not, we'll move on. That's okay. All right. So our next step is I'll have Catherine come up to talk about the workbook. So if everyone can please pull up their workbooks.
You could open your workbook also on your laptops, and we'll kind of quickly go through what it's about. So thank you, Maria, for introducing the other frameworks, because actually this is kind of a combination of different frameworks that already exist. So I had a look at Imagine IDP, which is one of the, what do you call them, the independent, the IDPs. But I felt it was a bit heavy for, especially if you're, say for example, you're doing your master's, because it already kind of gives you ideas of careers that you could go into. But if you're just starting out, it can feel a bit daunting. So I felt it was too much. So I combined that with, have you guys heard of Design Your Life? It's a framework from Stanford University. It started off as a framework, and then it kind of grew into a book, and it's a whole movement, and they do workshops throughout. It's very interesting. So this is a combination of a bit of Design Your Life and the Imagine IDP frameworks. So if we have a look, this workbook is meant to kind of take you throughout your academic journey. So it's not that, so don't look at it and think, oh my goodness, it's so many pages or it's so many sheets that I have to fill out. You don't have to fill them all out at the same time. And this is also why we're having the workshops, to kind of help you fill them out and kind of track your progress as well. So we'll quickly go through what's included in the workbook. So there's 5 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 sections. The first one is a career path. So where you kind of look at the direction, that's the long-term direction that you want to go into. So this is the eventual goal. And this is important because once you have the macro, it's easier to kind of work back. The career goals, the goals that will help you move forward towards your career interests, right? So Maria gave an example where she was looking at, one was career development, and then the other one was kind of the academic development. So the career development is what gets you to the career that you want to eventually. Skills, as the name suggests, the skills that you need to either get you to the career that you want, or even during your academic journey, what do you need to develop? What skills do you need to develop to be able to write a good thesis, to be able to finish your degree on time, to be able to graduate on time? So these are the skills that you would need within your academic journey, but also long term. Personal goals. So it's not just about studying. It's not just about the research that you're doing. It's you it's also to be able to have kind of a fulfilling, all-rounded life. You also have to look at the other aspects of your life. So this one actually is very interesting to me, and we won't look at it today, but you can have a look a bit later on the workbook because there's examples on that as well. The energy log. So this one was I got this from Design Your Life framework, and I really liked it because there's this concept of checking not necessarily your emotions, but checking your how you're feeling to indicate the things that interest you. Because sometimes it's very hard. So for example, from my I'm from Kenya, and from my country, there's a lot. I think there's a Kenyan here as well, Samuel. Yeah, there's another Kenyan here, so maybe he can attest to that. But there's usually a lot of pressure to get into specific careers. So we joke about it and we say, you're either an engineer, a doctor, or a failure. Anything else doesn't count. So it's very easy to feel like you're interested in something simply because that's the direction kind of you've been pushed into. So this having an energy log is a good way for you to really check within yourself what you're interested in, based on what drains you and what motivates you, you know, or what gives you energy. So say for example, if you write something and at the end of it you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need a nap, maybe going into a career where you're a research assistant maybe is not the best idea. But if you're writing and you feel really energized after that, maybe that would be a good career option for you. And then achievements, again, capturing the achievements that you have. It's a sense of it's a good way to keep motivated and to keep track of the things that you kind of want to keep doing. That's just kind of an overview of the whole workbook. But today we'll fill out two sections. So we'll go to the first section, the career path. So if you could just click on career path, the sheet, the second one. So we'll take a few minutes to fill this in. But first, I gave some examples just to give you an idea of some of the things that you could write down. So say, for example, your initial goal is, if you could scroll to the very left. Yeah, perfect, thank you. Okay, so maybe let's say your dream job is to be a policy advisor. Then maybe the sector that you want to work in is government. You feel you want to maybe have impact at the very highest level, or in departments or in sectors where you can actually make an impact. You're very interested in this job, so your level of interest is a 5. You're maybe not fully confident, and the confidence level is the level of based on the levels of skills and experiences that you have now, not in the future. So even if you're going to get the job 4 years from now, it's not the level of confidence you have then, it's the level of confidence you have in your skills and experiences now. And this is important because this is a good way to identify what you need to be developing between now and when you graduate, for example. Why this path appeals to you. So this again comes from the Design Your Life workbook, or the framework. And the idea here is, if you attach or if you combine your values and what you end up doing, either in your career or in your study, that's maybe not a sure way, but it's a higher probability of feeling some sense of fulfillment. So having the combination between your values and what you're actually doing. And then the skills required, say for example, if you need to work in policy, maybe you need to be a very good data analyst. You need good stakeholder engagement because you're dealing with people from different sectors. And the questions or the gaps that you would need. So say for example, what are the skills? Could we scroll to the right a little, sir? So maybe what are the entry points post PhD? How do you need to get yourself from graduation to actually getting a job? And the same for the other two jobs. So I gave one example in academia and one in industry as well. And it's kind of the same exercise. So we'll do the same, and you'll have 5 columns in your worksheet. So the first one, as I mentioned, the career path option, that's your long-term vision. Where do you want to end up? And bear in mind that you're not tied to anything. So just because you write it down doesn't mean that you cannot change your mind later. So don't feel this sense of pressure that if I say that am doing this thing, or if I want to go into this career, that that's what you have to end up doing. It's just a way, it's a good way also to track kind of how your thinking progresses. You can have one career path option, you can have multiple. That's totally fine. The second column is a sector. So the good thing with kind of identifying also the sector that you would want to work in is it helps clarify the environments that you'll thrive in. Different sectors have different expectations, different skills that you would need, and the setup is very different. So for example, if you're working in academia, correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, if you're working in academia, the pace is different than if you're working in industry, because the goals or the vision is very different. If you're working in industry, usually the bottom line is profit, usually, not always. So the pace is very different. If you're working in academia, usually the vision is different. It's more for development of people. So the pacing of the work is different. So if say, for example, you want a fast-paced setup, maybe industry is a good pathway. If you want something maybe that's a bit, maybe things take longer, maybe government as well would be a good option. So having this idea of the different sectors would be useful. The interest level, how appealing is a path to you, again, right now. If it changes in a month, if it changes in a year, that's totally fine. The confidence level based on your skills and experiences right now as well. Why this path appeals to you. So this again, connecting your goals to your values, which, as I mentioned, is very critical to long-term satisfaction. And then the information gaps and questions. So Maria mentioned the informal meetings or the informal interviews. If you ever have a chance to go for a networking session or an informal interview, having the questions in mind or the gaps that you would want answered is really beneficial, because you can hone in on the person that you would want to talk to and you can ask them these questions directly. Are there any questions on what any of the columns mean? No? Okay. So we'll take 5 minutes. You can fill in you can delete the examples if you want in your worksheet. You can keep the examples. It's totally up to you, because that's your version. Take 5 minutes, fill out all the columns, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. As you continue, I have a quick question. Does everybody know what their career path option is? Or does anybody not know? I see. Okay, that's fine. So if you don't know, you could start with either column 2 or column 5. So column 2 is a sector, or column 5 is a broad interest. So say, for example, I have done many different jobs in the past. So my initial degree was in business, and I majored in marketing. Then I ended up working a bit in sales and marketing. I realized I did not like sales. I think it's a very personality job. It's not my personality. Nothing against salespeople. And then I did my first master's in hospitality and tourism. And the reason I did this was because I was interested in traveling. But then I worked in hospitality and I realized that I like traveling, but I don't necessarily like working in that environment. Again, because it's very guest facing, and it can take a lot of energy. So I think after 3.5 years in the industry, I burnt out. And then I moved to education. And the reason why I moved to education was because while I was working in hospitality, I realized that I want a job that has a bit more impact, societal impact. And I wasn't sure how to get into, or how I could achieve impact. So I ended up it's a long story, so I won't give the full story, but I ended up working in fellowship. We call it a fellowship, but it's essentially a work study kind of environment. And one of my projects that I was working on was designing training. And I realized that I really liked it, but because obviously I wasn't trained in education, I ended up switching. So I ended up doing another master's in education. because I realized, again, it's the values, right? Realized that I like something that has a bit of impact. So that's column 5. So the value. So you can think of, maybe I want to have impact in society. Maybe I want, what would be another example of a value that you have in life? Yes, that's a really big one. Maybe it's very, very important for you to have good work-life balance. Maybe it's important for you to have something that pays really well. That would also be an important value. Maybe you need a job that helps you travel, for example, or on the inverse, maybe you need something that's very stable, right? So any of these could be values that are important to you. So identifying them could eventually help you narrow down maybe the sector that you want to work in or the job that you would want to eventually go into. That's column 5. Column 2, so you could use that first, and then you could leave the career path option blank today if nothing comes to mind. Column 2, we talked about the different sectors. So I gave an example of kind of the pacing of the different sectors, but there's other factors as well that come into play. So say, for example, good examples of different sectors, how you can look at them could be academia, for example, the private sector or industry, so working for a company, government, NGOs or non-profits, and startups. So all of these have different settings or different factors that go into play. So an important one, for example, is salaries. The salaries are very different in different sectors. It could be the same job, but you're earning very different depending on the sector. So for example, non-for-profit, maybe, as an example, maybe you're not earning as much in a non-for-profit for the same job that you would be working for in industry. Benefits, for example, I know government jobs in Canada, again, correct me if I'm wrong, are known to have really good benefits in terms of maybe health insurance, pension. They tend to be a bit more stable as well. So again, if that's something that's important for you, you could think of going into that kind of industry. Job security is different in different sectors. For example, with startups, if it's very, very new, it's a bit more, maybe not volatile, but there's a lot of changes. So maybe the job security may not be as high compared to, let's say, a company that's a bit more established, or maybe a job in an industry that's a bit more unionized, for example, or a sector that's a bit more unionized. Work-life balance, that also comes into play. The impact, the level of impact that you can have, or your purpose that you want to achieve. So if you can't think of anything to write under career path option, you could start with column 5, why that a job would appeal to you, any job would appeal to you, or column 2, the sector. So I'll give you maybe 1 more minute. Is everybody else okay?
And actually, I wanted to say we are going to have a speed networking event on Tuesday, November 25th, and Atkins, Realis, and Bombardier are going to be there. So they hire a lot of engineers. Bombardier especially hires a lot of engineers from Concordia. If you go on our Grad Pro Skills website where all our workshops are, and there's still space to register for the event. So all of you can come. You just have to register before, and it's a speed networking event that we do every year, once a year. We invite employers and alumni onto campus. And it's an opportunity for our students to kind of like put into practice your networking skills and meet people from different industries, different companies, and learn about, like the opportunities that exist in those companies and how the interview process is like, what it's like working there, what their job is like, their day-to-day, the skills they use, whatever questions you want to ask them. So it's Tuesday, November 25th from 4 to 7 p.m. on campus. It's free. We're going to have some food. So yeah, there's still room to register if you wish to do so. And we're going to have 16 employers. So right now on the website, there's only 8 listed, but we'll have 16 total. And we try to make it a point to have it like kind of diverse as well, in the sense that we know we have a lot of engineers, so we try to bring on people that hire engineers, but we know we have, obviously people in arts and science and different faculties. So we try to invite employers that are from kind of different domains. So I just wanted to share that with you all, that it's there's still time to register for that event. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to look at, so we talked about kind of the different frameworks for goal setting early, right? And we looked at the workbook. We're going to move on to transferable skills now. So the importance of identifying transferable skills and how to kind of identify them. So I mean, I've listed some reasons here, but um, can anyone think of any reasons why it might be important to identify transferable skills that you have in your degree right now that could be useful when you're working? Yes, Catherine. Yep, 100%. 100%. And a lot of our students tend to think also that, I'm doing my master's or I'm doing my PhD. The work that I do every day is highly academic. I don't have skills that employers are looking for, or I've looked at the job postings and they're asking for things I don't have. But in reality, you might not have some of the skills that employers are asking for, but you do definitely have transferable skills, especially for some of you who are saying that you've worked previously before coming back to do a graduate degree. You absolutely do have transferable skills. It's all in the way that you kind of take the skills that you have in your that you're sort of developing in your master's and your doctorate and frame it in a way that the employer will be able to understand. And by the employer, I mean generally it's going to be a recruiter or a hiring manager, so someone who doesn't necessarily have a master's or PhD. So it's the importance of identifying your transferable skills is to kind of more effectively market yourself to employers, and especially to people who are looking at your resume who likely don't have a graduate degree. So they, when you say teaching assistant, or I graded all these papers, or I spoke about my research at this conference, they don't really know what that means. They don't really know what that entails. They don't know necessarily the work that you had to put in to do those things and which skills you sort of had to use. So if you can kind of break that down for them, it makes it a bit easier. So like I mentioned here, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we identify transferable skills, the importance of it. Um, so I would start early on, which is something you guys are all doing now, so that's great. But thinking about every day the skills that you use, right? So you're using analytical skills, critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, writing, right? Communication skills. If you're going to many conferences, that's public speaking. You're delivering, you're speaking a lot in front of large audiences. So these are skills that you're using, maybe if not on a daily basis, but quite frequently. So I would start to take notes of those skills that you're using. Um, the other thing that's important about identifying transferable skills is, again, you'll kind of start to see like the skills that come up often that you're using. And maybe in contrast, you'll see that there's some skills that are not coming up as often, which can be okay if, so for example, in my role, I don't really have many programming skills, but I don't really need it in my role. So it could be okay, for example, that you're seeing, oh, I'm not maybe developing certain skills, or I'm not using a skill daily. But if you don't necessarily need it for a particular role that you want to go into, it's not the end of the world. So yes, identifying the value and the skill set you use daily, very important, especially as Catherine said, because when you do get to that interview moment, it'll be helpful for you and easier for you to draw on the skill set that you have and that you use on a daily basis. I've written connect your PhD skills to diverse opportunities. It could also mean your master's, your graduate skills, but essentially, again, this is where I'm talking about, let's say, well, I have an example for it on the next slide, so we'll put a little pin on that one, but just the importance of thinking about the skills that you use now as a graduate student and how that can be kind of transferable to skills outside of academia. So for example, I think it's Suleiman, you were mentioning that you're thinking maybe of doing a startup. So how can certain skills that you're using now, and I believe you're doing a doctorate, right? Like how can that transfer to a startup? So there's probably a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of like problem solving. There's a lot of, you know, having to think about things from different angles. There's a lot of independent work, but also having to work in a team. These are all skills that are going to be transferable and important and relevant in a startup setting, and even outside of a startup. Honestly, most jobs are going to ask you, you know, to be able to work well independently, work well in a team setting, problem solve. You know, issues are going to come up along the way. How do you react to those problems? Do you bring solutions forward, etc.? So when we're identifying transferable skills, so by building confidence in your skill set and unique strengths, I mean more so you're identifying the skills that you have, you're working further on them. And again, it's allowing you the opportunity to be able to, for example, in an interview setting, oftentimes there's many behavioral questions. And so if an employer asks you, you know, in this situation, or tell me about a time you had to work on a project and something didn't go well, or tell me about one of your biggest accomplishments, you'll be able to kind of think back and draw on the skills that you utilize daily, and the skills that you feel most confident in, the skills that allowed you to get to that point, and kind of share that with the employer. And then even past the interview setting, it's also just an opportunity to be able to feel confident in the work that you do, applying the skills that you feel you've sharpened throughout your time here. Identifying transferable skills can help you to set clear objectives and career goals. So this sort of goes back to what we mentioned in the beginning, right? So for example, if you're doing the IDP, the individual development plan, or working on the workbook that we just had you look at, it's an opportunity for you to set goals, achieve those goals. Again, determine where your strengths lie, where maybe you might need extra time, a little bit of more effort on certain skills, a little bit more effort on for example, it could be time and effort, you know, wanting to publish that paper by next semester. What does that mean? It means like adding a little bit more time throughout perhaps the week or on the weekends to focusing on that goal. And then I mentioned this already, but identifying skills gaps or areas to improve. So that's also the benefit of identifying your transferable skills. You see which ones you feel like you are quite strong in, and then the ones that you maybe feel are sort of lacking in a little bit. And it's an opportunity for you to kind of further develop those skills. And informational interviews are a great way for that as well, as I mentioned, because you're talking to people who are actually working in the field you want to work in. They're going to be able to explain to you, you know, the skills they use on a daily basis, what they do on a daily basis, and you can learn from there where you should sort of focus your attention. So that's the why. If we look at the how, so I've put two examples here that could be relevant to you all here. So a thesis proposal or a workshop facilitator or a TA, right? So if you're working as a teaching assistant, for example, and also I have a little question. So I've italicized some of the points, and some of the points I have not. And Suleiman, you can't answer this question because you were here last time when I used this example. But I'm curious to hear why you think that I've italicized some points and left some points without italics. Yes. No, but so still in the skills range, but to identify the difference between soft skills and hard skills or technical skills. So you'll often see in any job posting you look at, there's going to be a combination of hard skills and soft skills, or some people say personal skills, soft skills. The soft skills are essentially just like you know, your ability to kind of communicate well and effectively with your team, your punctuality, your ability to be kind of like work well in a team, things like this. So when we're looking at, like, for example, is anyone here currently TAing or planning on TAing? Okay, perfect. So when you're a teaching assistant, you have to work in a team setting, right? Like you might be working with other teaching assistants. You have your professor that you're working with. You're also working, maybe not necessarily working directly with students, but you are in a room working alongside other students or kind of interacting with other students. So that is the reason why I'm talking about the how to identify here, and also the importance of identifying the soft and technical, is because often students will ask us, one, either I don't have the skills employers are looking for. So this is a way to demonstrate you do. It's just a question of how you kind of identify those skills. And the second thing is that students often ask us, you know, I know I can, oh, the screen went, I know I can demonstrate my technical skills, for example, because I use them a lot in my degree, or I could show that I'm proficient in this program. But how do I demonstrate soft skills? How do I show employers that I have soft skills? And so this would be a good way as well to show employers your soft skills, right? So if you're working as a workshop facilitator or a teaching assistant, you have facilitation experience with facilitation. You have experience with communication, right? Being able to communicate effectively, whether that's orally, whether that's an email after to students. Time management. So you're having to manage your time. You're having, maybe you're TAing during the day, and then in the evening you're having to work or work on your dissertation or go to the lab. So these are kind of concrete ways to demonstrate those skills that you have. And then for the parts that I haven't italicized, so when I say leveraging various formats, that means like kind of what we're doing today, right? Like we're doing a hybrid event. We have people in person, we have people, well, we don't have people online, but we're recording for people online. So this is a way that you would demonstrate to employers, yes, I do have experience with this, designing and developing training modules, right? So if you're working as a teaching assistant or a workshop facilitator, you've likely had to do this more than once. What does that entail? What does that look like? So my point here is just kind of like using what you already do as a student and kind of changing the language to, you're still being honest, but you're reflecting to employers the skills that you have and the skills that you're acquiring, but in a way that's easier for them to understand, right? Instead of just saying like TA'd course, whatever. For you and anyone else in academia, it's very understandable. We know what that means. But for a recruiter or a hiring manager, someone who did not go to graduate school, who did not TA, they don't know what that means. So if you can kind of list your transferable skills in a way that's easier for them to understand, it helps them better understand how you have those transferable skills, or to show them that you do have those skills. And it helps you as well, because they are more likely, like it'll help you to kind of be called in for that interview, or it'll help you to kind of make the conversation flow better, because they have a much better understanding of what it is that you've done thus far. Does that make sense so far? Does anyone have questions? No? Alrighty. So speaking of skills, we're now going to go on to the skill section of the workbook. So if we could just go to, or do you want us to pull up the workbook, or is this okay? This is okay? Okay, perfect.
As we're going to the workbook, before we move on, I'd like to add something else to the transferable skills. So we had a look at a document, I think it was published by Yale, and they had listed transferable skills that are really important in every sector, in every job. A lot of the ones that came up a lot were communication, leadership. Actually, some of the ones that were italicized were a lot of the skills that were mentioned to be important. So if you could go back to the slide, yeah. Communication came up a lot, leadership, building relationships. This one is so important, regardless of whether you're working in a team setting or whether you're working autonomously. Being able to deal with people is so, so important. And this is a skill that most jobs will be looking at. So identifying transferable skills is not only good because it helps you kind of have that interview, but it's a good way to transition. So say, for example, you start off thinking that I want to go into one career, then you switch halfway through. You will not be starting from zero if you have some of these skills already, because as I mentioned, this you can apply and are needed in most jobs. So that's why that's also important to identify. So if you go into the skill goals section of the workbook, so one thing that I'd like to highlight is your academic journey. So Suleiman, you're doing a PhD. Songtai, I think you're doing a PhD also. Iris, you're doing a master's, PhD, and Diraj, PhD as well. Okay, so your PhD journey is about two main things. It's about the research that you're doing, yes, but it's also about building a portfolio of skills that you will later on use in your career. And that's true for any degree that you go into, whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate. So skills can be divided into two main categories. So one is technical skills, and one is the transferable or the soft skills or the horizontal competency skills that we just discussed. So what are some examples of technical skills that you could think of? Is that a trick question? Yes, very good. Yes, software skills. So if you think technical, think something tangible that you can actually show this is something that I can do. What are some examples, other examples of technical skills? Yes, 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 definitely design. Lab techniques could be another, coding could be another, maybe statistics could be another technical skill. Then the transferable skills, the soft skills are writing. So if you're doing a PhD, you definitely are acquiring and are needing those skills. Teaching, for example, leadership, communication, we saw some of them. So again, we'll go through the sections or the different columns in this sheet. So we'll start with the first one, the skills to develop. So you need to be able to identify the concrete skills that will help you move from the intention of your long-term vision in terms of your career to actual actionable goals. So again, if you go back to what we were discussing earlier with the SMART goals, to be able to achieve that goal, the macro, you need to break it down into the macro and make it actionable and achievable. And then the second column there, why it's important, being able to tie each skill with your personal motivation is a good way to increase your commitment. So if you can see, if I do X, I achieve Y, that is one of the surest ways of making sure that you can achieve you can maintain that momentum and help you prioritize when your time is limited. So is everybody here in their first year of the PhD? Yeah. We have a few students who sit over at the office where we work, and a lot of them are either in the second year or further along, and they talk about the time commitment that's needed for a PhD. It's a lot. So being able to prioritize your time while while achieving the targets that you have is very important. The third column, planned activities. Having specific skills or specific steps that you will take to build the skills is a very good way to make the goal measurable, realistic, again, coming back to the SMART goals, rather than just wishful thinking, because it can feel very daunting if you have this big goal and you don't know how exactly you're going to get to it. The timeline, this is when you expect to complete the activities, not master the skill. So that's very important. So we have the planned activities in column 3. We have the skills to develop in column 1. So the timeline here, you're not looking at when you will be an amazing leader, for example. You're looking at when you're going to achieve the activities that you need to get to those leadership skills. So that's a good distinction to make. The status, how you'll celebrate and stay accountable, again, coming back to the loop of motivation and engagement and kind of keeping up that momentum. And then the final one is the evidence of growth. So how are you going to show the tangible achievements of what you're doing, and how can you highlight this in your narrative CV? So I don't know whether you know, but the assessment is changing slowly of how you can show your kind of impact to a narrative CV. So it's less about maybe I did XYZ. It's more it's more detailed than that. So being able to have like a clear portfolio of achievements that you've had will help you later on when you're writing your CV. So again, we'll do the same thing as before. We'll take 5 minutes. So you can note down any skills that you want to develop. They can be technical, they can be transferable skills as well, and then work down through the columns. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so we're almost done. We're almost at the end. Our next, the ending, the last part of this portion is kind of more just like food for thought, things to think about moving forward. So I did want to mention a little note on goal setting. So essentially, I wanted to just kind of before you head off and you start kind of like using the workbook and making goals, I wanted to just say I know it can sound kind of cheesy and cliche at times, but to remember to be kind to yourself. So you're all starting, you have goals that you want to achieve. Maybe some will be more ambitious than others. So just remember to take the time to be nice to yourself, check in, determine if they're achievable, the goals, if they're too ambitious. If you need to come back and tweak things, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed, or it doesn't mean that you're not smart enough. It's just a question of having to readjust, which we all have to do, and that's totally fine. Yeah, I think a lot of times too, students kind of, or not only students, honestly, a lot of people, we kind of feel like we can't we can start something when we have more information, or when we have more knowledge, or when we've perfected something. But you don't need to wait until you're perfect at something. Just start, right? So like, even if it's writing your paper, often the best piece of advice people will say, we have a writing center here. If any of you need to visit at some point, there's a student success center and there's writing assistants. They'll say like, the best thing is to just start writing. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to sound like it makes sense, but just get something out on paper. So that's sort of like my point with the first point, is like, you don't need to wait until you're kind of perfect. It's just getting started is the best way that's going to help you to kind of put in motion those steps to achieve those goals. And then the other thing to think about, we've been talking a little bit about, careers and goal setting to kind of help you to achieve your academic goals, but also later on in your career. A sort of a gentle reminder that, if I know this might seem like it's a long time away, but a first job out of school, or maybe even a first job while you're studying, but especially out of school, if it's not a job that you necessarily love, or that it's not aligned 100% with what it is that you studied or what you thought you were going to be doing, not to panic. It's okay. It's we know now that people go through many, as Catherine mentioned, go through many different careers in a lifetime. So you're not bound to that one job. So no need to panic. See it more as like a stepping stone, getting you to where you want to be, and getting you that experience to help you in the next role. And then, yeah, just kind of, I mentioned these points already, but just remember to set realistic expectations. Maybe you're setting goals and you're having difficulty achieving them. And again, it's not a reflection on you as a person, but maybe they're just too ambitious. Maybe you're not giving yourself a realistic timeline. Maybe you need to give yourself more time. Like, maybe one goal you don't need as much time, but another goal you need a little bit more time to work on. Or maybe a friend of yours doesn't require that much time and you do. It's okay. Everyone's different. And lastly, do celebrate your achievements. I think, again, we often we complete an objective or a goal, and then we set the bar higher, and I think that's okay, to continue setting higher standards for ourselves. But if we don't take the little moments to kind of celebrate what we've accomplished, it can kind of feel like you're just going nonstop, and you're never acknowledging the sort of success you've had, and that can be a bit discouraging or demotivating at times. So this is just friendly reminders in the process along the way. You're starting out, to just kind of be patient with yourself and be kind to yourself. And then earlier as well, Catherine mentioned the design your life. So at the end of these slides that we're going to send you, I did attach a resource, which is a YouTube video from Kathy, what's her name? Kathy Davies, exactly. Thank you. She gave a presentation on Design Your Life at Stanford. It was a really great presentation, and I encourage you all to watch it. I think it was like max 30 minutes. But something that she said that really stayed with me, that I wanted to share with you, is looking at the unattainable best prevents us from working on all the accessible betters. And so essentially, just kind of like a really great quote to wrap up what I was just saying, in the sense of being patient with yourself, being kind to yourself, just starting, just sending that email that might feel intimidating, or putting those words on a piece of paper in a Word document, just taking the steps to get you to where you have to be. No one's perfect. No one's expecting perfection. But just kind of like doing those small things every day is what's going to help you to get to where you want to be and improve yourself. And then last thing, so we also wanted to talk just to spend a little bit of time on accountability and adaptability. Do I have yeah, okay. So one thing that we've sort of seen with research is that having an accountability partner, so accountability partner, or you can call it like a buddy, is just someone that you kind of decide who is going to be a partner that kind of like shares in your journey. So for example, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, a fellow peer in your lab or in a class, that you say, you know, like, how about every 2 weeks we check in, we spend an hour checking in, to see where we are with our goals, what we've achieved, what we might need help with, what we might have questions on. And it's so research has shown that that helps us to advance our goals and our objectives, for kind of two reasons, or a multitude of reasons, but two that I can think of off the top of my head. One, when we, and I'm sure you've all done this before, but when we say something out loud to someone, we kind of feel like a sense of accountability, right? We feel like, okay, I told someone, I said I was going to do this, like now I kind of have to follow through. So there's that portion of it that helps us to kind of actually follow through with the goal. And then the second piece, is that that person can act as two things. They can act as a resource. So if we feel like we're getting stuck, we have questions, we don't know how to do something, they can kind of step in and be and help guide us, right? Like, or maybe answer a question that we have, or if they can't answer the question, provide us to somebody, in the direction of someone who can. And they're also someone who will celebrate your wins with you. So I find, well, not me, but more often in general, we tend to be nicer to our friends than to ourselves. And so our friends are more likely, or if, again, a family member, a peer, doesn't matter who, will be more likely to kind of celebrate your achievements, or almost happier in a sense, you know, take more of the time to celebrate your achievements than we will, because we're just so busy thinking like what's next and planning ahead of what's next. So those can be some reasons to kind of think about the importance of having an accountability partner. I mentioned Thesis Boost earlier, but maybe joining a writing group. So whether it's Thesis Boost here on campus, we also starting this semester, the School of Graduate Studies, Grad Pro Skills, we're starting structured writing groups. So essentially it's going to be student led. And it'll just be a space again where you come in and you have time, structured time that's uninterrupted to sit down and meet and have accountability with people and write anything that's, whether it's your dissertation or any other academic publishing in a journal, any other academic writing. So joining a writing group could be a great way to kind of help keep you accountable and help keep you on track with your goals. Again, as we mentioned, you know, regular reviews and check-ins. So whether that's with your supervisor, whether that's with someone you've designated an accountability partner, a friend, a peer, having those regular check-ins is again going to help you kind of make sure you're staying on track, that you're meeting your goals, you're meeting objectives, you're going to be able to meet your deadline, at the expected date with the expected kind of tasks having been completed. And then just having flexibility. So remembering that things can change. You know, maybe the process is taking longer than you thought. Maybe someone, you know, you were supposed to have a meeting with your supervisor, they had to cancel, they had to reschedule. So just keeping that flexibility in mind that, you know, life happens and sometimes we have to sort of like shift our expectations, and that's okay. And that if you do have to shift your expectations or change a goal or something, like Catherine said, everything you're writing down in your workbook, it's not set in stone. Maybe it's going to change, maybe in a year from now or 2 years or 6 months, it'll change, and that's okay. It's just redirection. It's not a failure or a poor reflection on you. It's just, we're humans, and that's the nature of kind of being a human. So we've reached the end. And then before we head out, I just wanted to put some next steps. So it's kind of just like a bit of ideas to give you to take away for after you leave the workshop. So you don't have to do all four of them. I just kind of wanted to put a couple, and you can choose whichever one sort of resonates best with you. But the first one is that maybe you can choose another page in the workbook that we haven't yet worked on here, and you know, set a time in the coming week perhaps to sit and focus on that. And Catherine and I are here, you know, if you have any questions even outside the workshop for that. Perhaps you want to identify a few transferable skills that you have in your PhD that would be, well, transferable outside of your PhD. So what is it that you're doing within your PhD now where you feel quite confident? Maybe there's even a skill or two that you feel you want to work on, you want to further develop. So taking the time to kind of think about those skills. Maybe, you know, you want to look on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great platform. It doesn't only have to be LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is super helpful to one or two professionals in your field that you could maybe conduct a coffee chat or informational interview with. And maybe you want to look at a couple of career paths of interest. So doing the IDP, the individual development plan, can be a great way to kind of think about some career options that exist. So typically that's what they'll do is when you respond in the sections with your assessments, values, and interests, it'll kind of tell you like, oh, based on what the information you've given us here, perhaps these areas, these career areas could be of interest to you. So maybe you want to sort of do something like that to kind of give you an idea of where you want to move forward. And again, that's going to help you kind of set goals early on, think about your transferable skills, and help you to kind of like map out the path to get there. This is a list of resources I will update because I realized I somehow forgot to put the department that I work in, which is the School of Graduate Studies. So I'm going to add Grad Pro Skills to there. But so the first one is the Design Your Life website from Stanford. The second one is the YouTube talk that I just mentioned about Kathy Davies from Stanford giving that talk, which was really great. The last two are services you can use here at Concordia for free. So CAPS, Career Advising and Professional Services. Oftentimes people think they're just for undergrads. They are also for graduate students as well. So when you're paying your tuition, you're paying for these services. So please use them. The difference between CAPS and CCET. So CAPS is more career advising, which means let's say, for example, you've established, what it is that you want to do career-wise. Career advisors are the people you would go to see to say, okay, I need to brush up my LinkedIn. I need to brush up my resume, my cover letter. I want to do a mock interview. They are the people that can assist you with that. They do get booked up really quickly. So I would recommend going on their website and booking an appointment well in advance of when you need it. And for the career counseling and educational transition, so career counselors, they are more the people that you go to see when you say, this is what I'm studying. I don't really know what I want to do. Or this is what I'm interested in, or this is what I like. I'm not sure what I want to do. And they're the people that can help you sort of figure out, what they think could be kind of like a best career path for you. So probably if you're unsure what you want to do, then I would start with career counseling. And then once you have a better idea and it's more about like ensuring your professional documents are kind of well prepared, then I would move on to career advising. Last thing, so if you scan this QR code, you don't need to do it now because we'll send the slides. That will bring you to our website. And on our website, that's where you'll see all the free workshops that we offer. We also have a newsletter that goes out every second Thursday. So I think we had one that went out last Thursday. Was it last Thursday or is it? No, I think it's coming out this Thursday. But it goes out to graduate students every second Thursday. And we try to keep it very short. It just essentially talks about, upcoming workshops that we think could be of interest to you, or upcoming programs or like opportunities for funding, things like this. We also have a LinkedIn page where we post a couple of times a week. So if you'd like, you can give us a follow. We generally post in any kind of information related to career development or job opportunities, whether on campus or off campus. And then our email address is at the bottom if ever you have any questions. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect. So I have the QR code there, but again, we'll send the slide so you can do that later. And then the last thing that I will ask before you leave, if you could please take 2 minutes, we have an anonymous feedback survey. So if you can just scan this QR code, just to let us know how we did in today's workshop. The feedback is anonymous, so I won't know who wrote what. We just take the feedback so that we can always kind of improve our future offerings. And that's pretty much it. I'll stay back if any of you have questions. But yeah, I hope this was helpful.